Hi, my name is Ryan Liu, and I'm the National Chair of API Millennials for Hilary,
the national grassroots coalition, volunteer-run, dedicated to engaging and mobilizing young millennials to support Hillary Clinton. So a lot of it has been on the ground. So, for example, having them organize rallies, roundtables with surrogates like Constance Wu, canvases, phone banks, a lot of the essential on-the-ground work that needs to be done to win an election. But even in the process of doing that, like, you meet a lot of young Asian Americans who just come out for like the happy hours, and you get them involved in the network. So I think that's amazing, and we've really tried to help amplify and highlight, I guess, the stories of these young Asian Americans on social media, passing this information along to the general API Hilary campaign and getting them to help amplify that as well. We've gone through a lot of op-eds. We've contacted over 1,300 different media organizations to help spread the message. A lot of it stems from kind of my family background. My mom's side and her family escaped as refugees during the Khmer genocide in Cambodia. So they fled as refugees, went to Vietnam, Taiwan, and then the US. And my dad's side is from Argentina. He immigrated from Latin America. So they came from places where being politically involved meant that you were either harassed, imprisoned, or worse. So being able to be in the US and seeing at a young age that you could be politically involved and help change the system, even though it's not perfect, as you can see there's always criticism of it not being completely fair. But at least in the US, you have the opportunity to be involved, and that's something that does not exist in a lot of places in the world, including from the places that my parents came from. So that was initially what sparked my interest. Interning in DC, or right now working on the campaign too, a lot of it is talking to people from different backgrounds to see exactly what we can do to help the most amount of people. Just because their voice got silenced doesn't mean that their voice has to be silenced continually. I think it comes on the obligation of the newer generation to speak to what their struggles were and what type of nation we should build. We're definitely in a better place than we were 20 years ago in terms of Asian American representation. There are a lot of different Asian American groups based in DC and abroad, in the US, dedicated to increasing Asian American representation. For example, the Asian-Pacific-Islander Institute for Congressional Studies, APACS. You have CAPAL. A lot of different groups that I think really have paved the way for that to happen. We went to school next to a center that used to be used as a holding center for Japanese Americans before they were interned. We were in a state that helped usher the Chinese Exclusion Act, and just seeing all of that reminds us that we have to get involved, no matter what type of background we are in. And the bigger thing about how to reach out to Asian Americans, I think, is definitely tough. You're talking about a population that has a lot of members who are new immigrants, so a lot of them are not English proficient, so how do you reach out to them to get them involved? A lot of people also, for cultural reasons, maybe are not so inclined to get involved. For example, like I mentioned before, people who came from countries where it was harmful to get involved aren't going to want to do it in the US, even though they're citizens now. So I think it's definitely to consider when we're trying to reach out to this community. This goes to the whole idea of change. Like, how do you bring about change in a political or social context? You need advocates, activists, and the general public to support a certain initiative. So you can have advocates working within the governmental system, which I've done before. You can have activists working part of like different unions, advocacy groups, but you also need the general support of the public. So just being involved, just being aware of issues, sharing information, voting, I think is more than enough and amazing help. And that's definitely what we need more of. If you're in a place like New York, which may not be too competitive in the Electoral College, that doesn't mean you shouldn't be involved. There are so many phone banks going around. You can canvass in like Pennsylvania. You can even just donate your time to volunteering and helping spread information. And we also have to remember that it's not only a presidential election, but there are down ballot races too, Senate, city council person. There's so many different races going on that you can be involved in. I think it definitely helps that you are. I think regardless of who or what you support, the stakes are too high right now to not be involved. But beyond that, I think being able to be in this country, you want to make sure that your voice is represented. So whoever we end up electing, when they're going to make a decision and they talk to their advisors about if this is going to affect, for example, our communities, they'll be less likely to engage in something that's going to harm our community because they know our community is going to turn out to vote. But if you aren't represented in that case, then they're way more likely to vote for something or support something that's going to harm our community. And again, if you aren't at the table, then you're on the menu. And you look at the biggest issues like internment, exclusion in the past. If there were Chinese, if there were Japanese, if there were any Asian American legislators in that office, then I'm pretty sure that these legislative acts would have never happened. So again, I think the stakes are too high for us not to get involved, and I think our time is obviously now.